Picture this: a helicopter from the disco era, held together by decades-old duct tape and prayers, approaching one of the most sophisticated warships ever built. What happened next reveals the shocking reality of modern naval warfare, and why sometimes the most embarrassing encounters become the most valuable intelligence opportunities. This isn't just a story about military hardware, it's about pride, propaganda, and the brutal mathematics of modern combat. On a routine morning in the Persian Gulf, the tranquil waters were about to witness an encounter that perfectly encapsulated the technological gap between nations. At precisely 10:50 local time, an aging Iranian Navy helicopter lifted off with a mission that seemed almost quixotic in its ambition. The crew had been ordered to confront an American destroyer, force it to change course, and demonstrate to the world that Tehran still controlled these strategic waters. The helicopter they were flying told a story of its own. This aircraft had rolled off American production lines when disco music topped the charts and before the Islamic Revolution forever changed Iran's relationship with the United States. Now, decades later, this same machine was being used to challenge the very nation that had built it. The irony was lost on no one aboard the USS Fitzgerald. Inside the destroyer's ultra-modern combat information center, American sailors monitored their advanced radar displays with a mixture of professional curiosity and barely concealed amusement. The most sophisticated naval tracking system ever developed, originally designed to detect and intercept ballistic missiles streaking through space, was now focused on what essentially amounted to a flying museum piece. The technological disparity was so vast it bordered on the absurd. The Iranian helicopter's mission parameters were clear but ambitious. Intelligence gathering topped the priority list, followed by the psychological objective of forcing the American vessel to alter its course. Success would provide Tehran with a propaganda victory desperately needed to offset recent military setbacks. The strategy harked back to the tanker wars of the 1980s, when smaller assets were used to harass larger vessels, hoping to provoke reactions that could be exploited diplomatically. However, this confrontation was occurring in a dramatically different era. The Fitzgerald represented everything that made the United States Navy the undisputed master of global maritime operations. This Arleigh Burke-class destroyer packed 90 vertical launch cells loaded with missiles capable of engaging targets at distances exceeding 90 nautical miles. 4 massive gas turbine engines generated 100,000 shaft horsepower, propelling the vessel at speeds surpassing 30 knots. At the heart of this floating fortress lay the Aegis combat system, a technological marvel capable of simultaneously tracking over 100 targets while guiding dozens of missiles to their destinations. When the aging Iranian helicopter appeared on their scopes, the system immediately assigned it track designation 0341. The threat library instantaneously identified the aircraft as a 1970s anti-submarine warfare platform, export variant, with a threat priority assessed as negligible. The computer had already calculated 47 different engagement solutions using various weapon systems. In a wartime scenario, this encounter would conclude within 30 seconds. Spy radar would lock onto the target, fire control illuminators would paint it, and a Standard Missile-2 would launch, transforming the helicopter into what sailors grimly called aluminum rain. The helicopter approaching this pinnacle of American naval engineering was the same model Iran had purchased from America before their Islamic Revolution, back when disco music dominated airwaves and Saturday Night Fever was breaking box office records. The aircraft's antiquated APN-130 Doppler radar technology, a relic from the Vietnam War era, was broadcasting its position to every American sensor within 200 miles. The Fitzgerald's SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite immediately began its work, functioning like a sophisticated digital fingerprint collector for enemy electronics. Every emission from the approaching aircraft was being catalogued with scientific precision. The system captured frequency patterns, pulse repetition rates, and signal strength, building a unique electromagnetic signature for this specific helicopter model. This data would become invaluable ammunition for future electronic warfare encounters. The process resembled recording someone's voice for later identification purposes. Every radar pulse, radio transmission, and navigation beacon was being logged into an ever-expanding threat library. When American forces encountered similar aircraft in the future, their jamming systems would know exactly which frequencies to target, which signals to spoof, and how to blind the aircraft's sensors completely. Inside the aging helicopter, the Iranian crew battled their own equipment as much as they fought the challenging wind conditions. The cyclic stick vibrated continuously from worn rotor bearings that should have been replaced during the Clinton administration. Warning lights flickered across the instrument panel, though most had been disconnected because replacement parts hadn't existed since the Shah's fall decades earlier. The pilot performed quick mental calculations as he checked the fuel gauge. Fighting the headwind while attempting to match the destroyer's impressive speed was burning through their reserves at an alarming rate. They had perhaps 45 minutes on station before requiring an immediate return to base, assuming both engines continued operating properly. The Aegis system had already calculated 47 different methods to destroy the helicopter using Standard Missile-2 surface-to-air missiles. Each missile cost significantly more than the helicopter's estimated worth, traveled at Mach 3.5, and could pull 10 gravities during terminal maneuvering phases. The helicopter's maximum speed in a dive barely reached 140 knots. This wasn't merely a technological mismatch, it was almost comedic in its disparity. Despite this overwhelming disadvantage, the Iranian crew pressed forward with their mission. Tehran had specifically ordered them to confront the American warship and demonstrate to international observers that the Arabian Gulf remained Iran's sphere of influence. Here they were, flying a helicopter older than most crew members, approaching a destroyer capable of turning them into fish food without breaking a sweat. As the helicopter closed to within 10 miles, the intelligence team aboard the Fitzgerald experienced genuine excitement, not due to any perceived threat, but because this represented a golden opportunity to update their comprehensive threat libraries. For the information warfare officer, this was Christmas morning, wrapped in an intelligence bonanza. The Iranian pilot pushed his collective forward, diving the helicopter toward the destroyer in what he believed constituted an aggressive attack profile. The aircraft dropped to 500 feet above the churning waves, its 1960s airframe groaning audibly under the accumulated stress. This represented textbook Iranian harassment tactics: fly low to appear threatening, make close passes to provoke responses, and utilize civilian frequencies to claim innocence if engaged. Through the scratched plexiglass windscreen, the pilot could observe the USS Fitzgerald maintaining its steady course, not even bothering to adjust speed. The destroyer's wake churned the sea behind it in a display of casual indifference. Just another routine day in the Persian Gulf for the American crew. The pilot's accented English crackled through radio static as he issued his warning. "American warship, you are approaching Iranian territorial waters. Change course immediately." The Fitzgerald's communications team dutifully recorded every word while struggling to maintain professional composure. The destroyer had been operating in international waters throughout the morning, and everyone monitoring the situation understood this fact perfectly. As this radio exchange continued, the intelligence collection opportunity proved too valuable to ignore. The SLQ-32 system initiated a comprehensive spectrum analysis of the helicopter's emissions. The Iranians were utilizing commercial aviation frequencies for military communications, employing no encryption, no frequency hopping, and nothing that would challenge a basic Radio Shack scanner from the 1980s. Through the sophisticated Link 16 tactical data link system, every American asset in the region observed this encounter in real time. Link 16 functioned like a military messaging system, where all participants shared identical tactical pictures instantaneously. The system employed time division multiple access protocols, essentially allowing everyone to communicate in millisecond intervals without interference. Each participant received specific time slots for transmission, all protected by NSA-approved cryptographic systems featuring military-grade encryption so sophisticated that every computer on Earth would require thousands of years to crack a single message. The Fitzgerald shared track 0341 with a cruiser 50 nautical miles distant, a carrier 200 miles away, and every surface combatant and aircraft positioned between them. Inside the helicopter, the crew chief watched their fuel gauge plummet like a stone. Attempting to maintain pace with the destroyer, traveling at 30 knots, was consuming their reserves at a genuinely alarming rate. The port engine oil pressure gauge fluctuated ominously in the yellow zone. These General Electric T-58 engines had been magnificent during their heyday, producing 1,400 horsepower each when new, but that era had occurred during the Johnson administration. The Fitzgerald's bridge team treated the helicopter flyover with the same level of concern typically reserved for observing seagulls or floating debris. The close-in weapons system automatically tracked the helicopter, but didn't bother elevating its barrels. The system was specifically designed to destroy supersonic missiles, making tracking this subsonic antique comparable to using a supercomputer for playing tic-tac-toe. The fire control computer calculated the engagement parameters with mathematical precision. At 500 feet range, 110-knot closure speed, and 30-degree crossing angle, the solution became elementary. A 1.2-second burst consisting of 94 rounds would achieve a 98% probability of catastrophic target destruction. The Iranian helicopter attempted another pass, this time approaching from the stern. The pilot could observe sailors on deck continuing their routine maintenance work, not even bothering to look up at the supposed threat overhead. One sailor actually waved, the kind of casual wave typically reserved for passing tourists. This casual dismissal stung worse than any weapon system could have. The Americans weren't even taking this encounter seriously enough to sound general quarters. The Fitzgerald's defensive systems remained in standby mode because activating them would waste electricity against such a negligible threat. The ship's combat systems were engineered to handle saturation attacks from dozens of supersonic missiles simultaneously. The Iranian pilot keyed his radio one final time, his voice cracking with mounting desperation. "This is your final warning. Change course now." Unfortunately, he delivered this ultimatum with roughly the same authority as a toddler protesting nap time, revealing the true nature of the Iranian mission. This wasn't actually about threatening the destroyer or controlling territorial waters. The real objective involved recording audio of warnings issued to American warships, claiming they had successfully defended sovereign territory and creating propaganda content to boost domestic morale following recent military setbacks. The Fitzgerald's bridge team didn't even acknowledge the transmission. They were occupied with actual navigation duties, preparing for a routine course change that had absolutely nothing to do with the helicopter's presence. This scheduled navigational correction to reach their next waypoint would soon provide the Iranians with their desperately needed propaganda victory. When the destroyer executed its planned turn, the Iranian pilot immediately declared triumph over the radio, proclaiming that the mighty American warship was retreating and that the Islamic Republic had successfully defended its waters. Back in the Combat Information Center, the intelligence team ensured they were recording everything. This footage would provide comedy gold during future operational intelligence briefings. Within hours, Iranian state media would transform this inconsequential encounter into an epic victory narrative. Dramatic music would accompany grainy footage of their helicopter, supposedly forcing the American destroyer to change course. Tehran would claim they had demonstrated American vulnerability and proven Iran's continued ability to project power in regional waters. The reality that they had risked an irreplaceable aircraft to slightly inconvenience a morning watch team would never make the evening broadcast. Sometimes the most valuable intelligence comes not from sophisticated espionage operations, but from observing how adversaries reveal their capabilities, limitations, and desperate need for symbolic victories in an increasingly complex world of modern naval warfare.